Hi everyone, so this video we are going to go through covalent nomenclature, the last and final piece of the nomenclature puzzle. We're going to learn how to write the name and write the formula for these covalent compounds. So writing the name, and I'll talk about this box over here to the right in just a second, but when writing the name, basically all we do is use Greek prefixes in the name to show or to tell how many atoms for each element are in the formula. So if you need to, go ahead and pause the video so that you can write that down, as well as all of our Greek prefixes. Some of them are hopefully familiar. Some of them you might have to study a little bit, but go ahead, pause the video and write those down. So you're going to use those Greek prefixes to tell you how many atoms are in the name. So looking at this is a compound that everybody's familiar with. So out loud right now, I want you to tell me, what is this name? What is the name of CO2? Out loud, say it. Say it. And what'd you say? Hopefully you said carbon dioxide. And that is 100% correct. So again, looking at our prefixes, the di comes from the two. So there's two oxygens, dioxide, two oxygens, and then we have carbon. And you might have noticed, well, there is a prefix for one, it's mono, but there is no mono in here. And we know that because of our experience, but there's also a rule that says why. So for the mono prefix, first element, never gets mono. E is a little weird there. And then second element, always mono. Of course, if there's only one atom. So here, carbon was the first element. And so since he was the first and there was only one of him, he does not get that mono. But now here in the second example, we would call this one diphosphorus, and then I do see that there's only one sulfur, and the second element has to have that prefix. So here, the second element, if there's only one, has to have the prefix. So here's sulfur, and there's only one of him. So diphosphorus monosulfide. Easy enough, yeah? That's rule number one. So mono, first element, never, second element, always, as long as there's only one atom. All right, next, what is this called? CO. CO, go ahead, take a second, pause it if you need to. What is CO called? There's detectors in our houses that make sure that we don't die from this kind of poisoning, and it is carbon, not oxide, because it's the second one. We need a mono, so carbon monoxide. And hopefully you've heard that before, carbon monoxide. And it goes along with our rule that we just said. The first element, if there's one, does not get that mono, but the second element, if there's one, has to get that mono. But there's something else here going on that I want to point out. So we know that the prefix for one is mono, and oxygen is spelled oxide. So if we put those together, it should be monooxide. But that's not what you said out loud, right? A minute ago, you said carbon monoxide, not carbon monooxide. So oxygen is a special element. He always has his own set of rules along with hydrogen. And this rule, this second rule here, says that you'll always drop the A or the O from the prefix when using oxygen. So only oxygen. And some of them are going to look kind of funky, and I know it looks weird and it sounds weird, but oxygen's the only one that we're going to drop. So here, instead of carbon monoxide, we have carbon monoxide. We dropped this O from mono, and then put it with the oxide. So let's take a look at this example. We have 3 sulfurs, so tri-sulfur. And now we have 6, which is hexa oxide, but we're not going to say hexa oxide. We're just going to say hex oxide, hex O-X-I-D-E. So again, we had the hexa, but we dropped the A and put it with oxide. So pretty easy rule, and as long as you go back to what you know, something like carbon monoxide, that can just help you remember that rule. Okay, and then finally, our third rule says that we can never simplify the covalent subscripts. For example, when you see, highlighter here, when you see this, I'm just going to bring an arrow down, you may be inclined to say SO2 because the 3 and the 6 simplify. But that is not right, and I'll show you why. If we try to name this, what would you name it? Hopefully you would say sulfur dioxide. And sulfur dioxide is a different name than trisulfur hexoxide. So you cannot simplify them because it changes the name, it changes the identity. We're not talking about charges and simplifying anymore. Those are for ionic compounds. So never simplify covalent subscripts. Otherwise, otherwise it changes the name, and ionic compounds, it doesn't. Okay, so if you need to pause the video to write all that down, go ahead. I'm going to move up to, where are we at? Here we go, writing the formula. So writing the formula is super duper easy because everything is right there for you. You don't have to look at the periodic table. You don't have to think about anything. There's no, special rules. You just do what it says. So I'm going to start here by looking at the elements that I have. I'm always going to have 2 elements. In this case, I have sulfur and I have iodide, which is iodine, iodine. So I'm going to say, okay, S, it's a funky looking S. Let me erase that and rewrite that. No, maybe, come on, little fella. There we go. S, and I have I. And that S has to be capital because it's sulfur. I has to be capital because it's iodine. If it was, S, big S, little I, well, that's silicon, right? It's not sulfur triiodide. And then we need to look at the prefixes to get the subscripts. So hexa means that there's 6 sulfurs. So I have S6. And then triiodide means that there's 3 iodines, I3. So I have S6I3, which is hexasulfur triiodide. And notice that we do have this double I going on here, and that's super funky looking, but it's correct because we only drop letters when we're looking at oxygen. So don't let that throw you off. And that's how you write the formula. And it's truly that simple every single time. So hopefully this video helped kind of walk through the steps. Remembering the rules is going to be, the biggest challenge here, and knowing those Greek prefixes. So good luck, and let me know what else you need. Thanks, guys.